Thanks for joining for the Middlebury School in Spain informational session. Try to get this done in about an hour. I'm gonna have returned students come and join me in about 15 minutes. So we'll talk today about what sites are available at the school in Spain. We'll talk about the academic program that you can expect, housing, how much it's going to cost, year versus a semester. I actually had an email just before this meeting about somebody who wants to do something before Spain in the fall and then go abroad to Spain in the spring. That is difficult, so we'll talk about why that's difficult and all the many ways it's difficult. We'll talk about the application process. There's now the intent to study abroad. Intent to study abroad is due November 1st. So that is coming right up. So we're going to get you all quickly moving down the path so that you know what to do next. To apply to study abroad, you have to have a B- overall. You have to have a B in your major and a B in your Spanish course. I'm going to preempt the question, what if I haven't had a Spanish course? You need to get into one. So if you haven't taken Spanish yet, that means that you've likely taken the placement test. You know that all you need is 300 level. So if you've placed into some 300 level, it's normal to wait and take it. They're difficult to get into, I will say that. So I wouldn't wait much longer than this coming spring. Try to get into a course or J-term. Sometimes last year they started teaching some in the J-term. So if they have one, then J-term or spring, go ahead and get in one. So I'll need to wait then basically to review your application until after I have the grade from your course, but I'll give you a preliminary grade or a preliminary decision before having that. You need to have an approval from your major advisor, which means that you need to have declared your major prior to submitting your application to study abroad on February 1st. A lot of the faculty aren't here during J-term, so it's something that you're going to want to do this fall. A lot of people put a lot of, stress on their major. I want to let you know that you can change your major. It's not a final decision, especially I know some of you are Febs and you've been here for a semester and a week. So, I understand you might not be sure, but you probably have an idea whether it's philosophy or physics. So go with whether, what you think you're doing somewhere, especially people have a lot of trouble deciding sometimes between IP&E or econ, that sort of thing. Just choose one of those so that you can have a conversation with a human who can help guide you. And then as you take more econ or more poli-sci or more IGS or more whatever it is, you'll be able to narrow that focus a little bit. And if you're not sitting abroad for 3 more semesters, there's a little bit of wiggle. I don't want to say it's fine. You can easy to change your major. I don't want to say that, but within reason, it's not crazy to go from IP&E to just econ or vice versa. You're going to want to think about why you're going abroad. And so we've all been kind of talking about this. As you know, probably right now, housing is very tight on campus, as is course enrollment. So perhaps you also tried to take, say, a 300 level language class right now and you weren't able to get in. So we're doing this intent to study abroad to try to even people out, basically, not only on campus, but also in Spain. I have a wait list right now for Madrid for the spring semester. Not everybody who wants to go can go, and it's because not enough people went in the fall. And so we're trying to get people on board with studying abroad earlier so that people can make time to plan to study abroad in the fall. I feel like, with the application deadline not until February, people weren't really giving it enough consideration. And I understand there are reasons to choose one or the other. We just need about half of you to choose one and half of you to choose the other. So that's where we're coming from there. So there's the register to study your intent to study abroad by November 1st. And then there's the application process due on February 1st. If you haven't registered your intent to study abroad, you cannot apply to study abroad. What else do I want to say? You are expected to take language all the way until you go, most of the time. However, in Spanish, a lot of you come in with a very high level and you just don't have room in your schedule and you don't really need to take Spanish every semester before you go, and that's okay. You definitely should have it at least the semester before the semester you go abroad. If you don't have it, just that penultimate semester right there. Either one of those two. There are also ways to keep up with Spanish that there just aren't for other languages. Obviously you can go to Language House. They love to have you. Your faculty love to have you at events. But you can watch television. You can listen to podcasts. You can keep up with Spanish probably as easily as any other foreign language that you're trying to keep up with at Middlebury. So do some combination of that just to make sure that you're not losing any of the ground that you've gained. The 300 level language class that you have to have, I don't know that they're actually teaching any in the department anymore that don't qualify. But you can't take advanced grammar and you can't take comp and convo. You need to take some sort of, call it a content course where you're being taught something other than the language itself in that class. If you have questions, feel free, just shout them out as we're going. In Madrid, Cordoba, and Logroño, how to choose between those sites. You're going to think about what you want to study. There are certain places where you can only study one thing. Certain places where, I don't want to say, if you're an econ major, there's only one place you can go. If you're a psych major, there's only one place you can go. So sometimes it's easy like that. If you're a Spanish major, you can go anywhere because you can get Spanish credit for anything. Same with if you're a history major. If you're an education major, if you're a linguistics major, it makes sense to go to Logroño. If you're an art history major, a lot of kids will want to go to Cordoba. ES, you can study at the Autónoma or in Cordoba. So, but econ, you're really going to have to go to the Carlos III. Same thing if you're studying computer science. So depending on what you're studying, there are definitely tracks and universities that make more sense for you. Think about how much structure and support that you need. Madrid is where we have our entire staff. There are 5 of them and they all are in Madrid. So if you want to be somewhere where you have a bigger Middlebury network, you're going to want to be in Madrid. Conversely, if you do not want to be with a big Middlebury network, you're going to want to choose Logroño or Cordoba. Logroño, I have just a few students go. I had 5 in the spring. Currently, I have no one. Cordoba, this coming spring, I'll have 9. And in Madrid, I'm going to have about 70, 75. So it's not a small difference. It's a big difference. In Madrid, there are 3 different sites. So in Madrid, you can study at just the Sede Prim. You can study at the Sede Prim plus the Carlos III. That's the university where you can take social sciences. So poli-sci, sociology, econ, and I mentioned before computer science. Or you can take classes at the Sede Prim, our own program center, plus courses at the Autónoma. And that's where you need to go in Madrid if you want to study psychology, so neuro also, and the STEM fields. In the fall semester, I have room to take other students too who want to study at that university. In the spring, I'm only going to be able to take, given what I'm doing right now, I'm only going to be able to take the students who can only study there, especially for psychology, if it's a spring semester. Think about how big of a place you want to be. Madrid is giant. Logroño is, people say it's too small. I will remind you, there are 8,000 people where you have chosen to go to school. So 150,000, it's not going to seem tiny to you. Think about what kind of living situation you prefer. Host families, if you want a host family, they're only available in Madrid. We have 1 host family in Cordoba. So I guess there's 1. If you want to live in an apartment, you can live in an apartment with local students at any of the sites. If you want to live in a residencia, which I'll explain, but it's basically, it's a, student living, student dormitory type living that isn't affiliated or located on any college campus. So it's just like a residence hall for students in Madrid. Calendars. The calendar in the fall semester, the Carlos III and the Sede Prim all run, end of August, so right before the Christmas holiday. They close, the universities close for the Christmas holiday, depending on, regardless of what holiday you're celebrating in the winter. That's kind of how they run their calendar. They'll close for about 2 weeks and they'll reopen in January. In Cordoba, Logroño, and also at the Autónoma in Madrid, they will have their exam period in that January. At the Carlos III, they'll open back up for classes again in January. So if you're doing a fall semester abroad, it's fall and winter is what you're doing, and you're going to get 5 units of credit for that if you decide to study at the Autónoma in Cordoba or in Logroño. In the spring, they're usually all J-term plus spring programs, 5 units of credit for the program. This year, Cordoba starts so late and J-term is so early that actually they're not overlapping. So I can never really promise, but usually that's how it goes. Yeah. So how long should you go? I would tell everybody to consider to go abroad for a year. I've never ever had anybody come back from a year and say, I don't know, a semester probably would have been fine. People who come back from the year are always my happiest, returned to study abroad students. They made more friends, they made more meaningful friendships, they traveled more, they didn't have, it's hard, studying abroad is hard, right? You have to learn everything is new. The transportation system is new, the university system is new, and how they assign grades and how you're supposed to study. How feeding yourselves is probably going to be new. And you're gonna have to do that unless you live with the host family who's feeding you every meal of the day. So it's a lot. And so once you've figured it out, it's nice to just kind of, have an easier time of it your second semester. So people abroad for the year tend to really enjoy that. I understand it's not an option for everyone. So given that, then you think about which semester that you want to go. You look and see what J term means to you. Athletes I know will want to consider when their fall or, going opposite of their competition schedule. Swimmers usually go abroad to the Southern Hemisphere in the spring semester. So in case you are here because you want to go to Spain, and I just said that to you and that resonates with you, Latin America programs don't start until early March. So a lot of people can finish, most of the competition schedule and then go study abroad, where you can't do that in Spain. What else?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
great.
What is the in terms of Logroño and Cordoba, what do the student populations kind of look like in relation to just the overall?
Oh, yeah, they're bigger universities too. 25,000 kids at the universities. So bigger universities, but a lot of graduate students. So you'll have larger classes at all of the universities than you will at Middlebury, especially in those survey courses in the beginning. But Cordoba and Logroño especially, it feels open. It's, a campus that has kind of like wide open green spaces and sidewalks. So it feels like you are it feels like you're in a more rural situation than it does. Even Cordoba it's a very urban campus, unless you're at the science facility.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I just want to get through money, and then I'm gonna have the students come back, and I've got a returnee from every site. They all are able to make it in the end, which is exciting, to talk to you about all those places. It's gonna cost you about the same money that it would cost you to spend a semester at Middlebury. That is to say, if you are an aided student, they say that your estimated family contribution should remain about the same. And then they're gonna make up the difference in aid, even though what you're paying is not a comprehensive fee. So at Middlebury, you pay, I'm using round numbers, $40,000 to go for one semester, and that's room, board, and tuition. So when you're abroad, you pay tuition, you pay your study abroad fee, that's new when you're abroad, and that comes to Middlebury. Middlebury will pay itself first. If your family contribution is not enough to cover all of your out-of-pocket expenses, namely room and board, your travel there, your books, your visa, and your personal expenses like cell phone, bus pass, that sort of thing, then Middlebury will bridge the gap and they'll give you what's called a disbursement, money toward your studies that you need on top of your family contribution in order to pay all of your out-of-pocket expenses. So right now, the semester charge is 19,000 plus the study abroad fee, 2,000. So, round numbers, call that $21,000. And then you're going to have these out-of-pocket expenses. So in Middlebury or in Madrid right now, it's about $10,000. For the fall, it's about $12,000. If you do, basically it's $10,000 for the 4 semesters of just the fall, or $12,000 if you want to stay 5 semesters, which is spring or fall plus winter. Cordoba is cheaper because it's cheaper to live in a more rural place than it is to live, Vermont, New York City, you get it. And you'll pay those expenses as you go. The year tuition, it's not exactly twice for the out-of-pocket expenses, mostly because it's only one plane ticket in there, which I'd just like to mention because some people will want, if you will go abroad for the year, you will want to go to your home in order to spend the holidays with family, or you will want to do some traveling around, and that money is not in this budget. So I just like to mention it. So if you want to look at a sample, fall student in Cordoba, about $29,000. The first number is the tuition, second number, that 2,000 is the study abroad fee, and then almost $8,000 in living expenses. So if a student's family contribution is $6,000 per semester, Student Financial Services will award an aid package that is much less than the aid package that you would get at Middlebury, because at Middlebury it would look more like $34,000 for the $40,000 comp fee, but here it costs less to be there. So Student Financial Services will award an aid package of around $23,000 in order to bridge that gap. Middlebury will pay itself first. The billable expenses are the tuition plus the study abroad fee. It'll leave a balance of $1930 that they would give to you in the form of a disbursement to use toward those out-of-pocket living expenses. And then your family's $6,000 would kick in there, and that should cover everything it costs you to eat, pay your rent, buy your books, get your bus pass, do all those things. And then you'll be paying those as you go. So usually students, even if they're usually on a payment plan, they don't need that payment plan when they're abroad, if this is the sort of situation they're looking at, because all of those expenses happen monthly anyway, which is how a payment plan is set up. One thing to know is that if you have work study on campus, it's going to be replaced by loans, and you'll have to accept your loans in order to bridge the gap to get up to having enough to be abroad. And then the only thing it's not going to cover, things like personal travel, fun food, late night taxis, that sort of thing. All right. So I'm pausing. I'll take questions, and I'm also going to ask my attorneys to turn on their cameras so I can see them. I can see who I've got. Thanks. You guys are quick. All right. You're all here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love it when it works. Okay, great. I'm going to be quiet. And I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves. And then as we go through each site, I'll ask you some more specific things about housing and classes. I did get a question before you were on here in Logroño, especially asking about kind of how big is the university. And so, you know, numbers are one thing, but kind of talk about how big your classes feel. And we'll do that later when we get when we talk about the academics, but I just don't want to forget. So I'm going to go in the order that you're on this screen. So Emma, do you want to say hi first?
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I'm in my last semester here at Middlebury. I studied abroad in Cordoba in the spring. At Middlebury, I studied Spanish and linguistics. And while I was there, I was able to take some history classes, linguistics courses, and an art history class as well.
Perfect. Thanks. Go ahead, Hayden.
Hi, I'm Hayden. I am a senior graduating 2025. I am a math major and a CS minor at Mid, and in Logroño, I studied three classes that were art history, introduction philosophy, and geography.
Great. Michael.
What's up, guys? I'm Michael. I studied in Madrid at the Universidad de Carlos III. I took one of my classes there and then 3 of my other classes at the Sede. I predominantly studied poli-sci and econ at Mid, and I took a poli-sci class there, but most of my other ones were just to fulfill distribution requirements. So I took an art class as well and a philosophy class, which helped me get through some of my graduate degree.
Daniela.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Daniela. I'm a senior here at Mid, and I'm a double major with film and psychology, and I studied at the Madrid site in the fall of last year. And while there, I took 2 classes with like the Middlebury program at Sede Prim, and then I took those were like an art history class, and then like a Don Quixote class was the one that I took. And then at La Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, I took 2 psychology courses to fill out psychology distribution requirements.
Perfect. All right. Oh, sorry, I should have done that. I should have clicked that. All right, so I want to talk about just really quickly about Madrid, the Sede Prim. And so I need Michael and Daniela to help too. Because my returnee I was miscommunicating with my returnee for the Sede Prim. So one option is to go and take all 4 of your classes at our program center at the Sede Prim in Madrid. It's just a floor of a building. People always want to ask me about the campus, so I just want to be very clear. It's an office building. It's a nice office building, but it's an office building. We rent space there. It's like a circle around. It's got an interior courtyard. We've got staff. We actually have 5 staff members now. I'll update that. 5 staff members. They're open Monday through Friday. This spring, we're teaching classes on Fridays because we have so many kids that we have to. So again, sort yourselves out, save yourselves some time. what else do I want to say? We can take 18 undergraduate students there, and usually around a dozen graduate students who are there doing the program as well. Yeah, so the one class, and I don't think you took it, Daniela, so Mike, I'll go to you. You'll test when you get there, no matter what program you're doing in Madrid, you're gonna test at the sede and you're gonna take a language class, unless you're a native speaker. So, Michael, can you tell them about your language class?
Yeah, so you get to the sede and everyone does a like a prerequisite language test. It's pretty standard and it's just an online format. It's got like 4 different sections to it: reading, listening, writing, and I'm forgetting the last part. But anyways, it'll match you with what your language level is, and then you'll take one of 3 courses. It meets like twice a week. It's pretty much just like advanced syntax or communication, and you're going to be learning like lots of different like tenses that you only use in specific situations, but are pretty useful to have. And it's pretty similar to like a Middlebury language course that you would take here.
So you'll do that at the Sede Prem, and then you'll choose from among a few electives. There are not a bunch. Maybe there are 5 or 6 taught, and you'll choose a few. So if you're taking classes at the Sede, you're taking most of the classes that they're offering there. Yeah, Danielle, do you want to say anything about your 2 classes?
Yeah, I ended up, because I am a native speaker, I ended up taking a master's class while I was there, which I found really enjoyable, and I got to know like people that like were technically in the same program as I was, but I wouldn't have interacted with if I wasn't in that master's program. And as a native speaker, like I didn't find it incredibly difficult, but it definitely was like more difficult than the other class I was taking. So if that sounds like you, that is a possibility or like an option.
Yeah, I do hear from students that the Sede Prem, there's a lot more work associated with each class. You'll have regular assignments and assessments throughout the semester, but you also have a really good idea how you're doing and the progress that you're making. We will talk to those of you who took university classes in a minute after that to tell me about how it doesn't feel like that at the university. Like I said, in Madrid, and these 2 will tell you about their housing too. But basically for housing, our rules are these: you have to live in a Spanish-speaking environment, you can't live alone, and you have to live with somewhere safe. The Spanish-speaking environment is the one that's hard to control from the beginning. Homestays, obviously, Spanish, no problem. Residencias, those are going to be varying levels of Spanish. They are easy to book from abroad, and therefore a lot of people book them from abroad. So you get a lot of international students in your residencia. In an apartment, you can book it, but you have to wait until the apartment's half full, so we can make sure that there are actual people who speak Spanish in that apartment before you book it. So those are kind of the rules around housing in Madrid. All right, talk about your psych classes, Daniela.
Yeah, in terms of like basic just size, it was probably like at least the size of like an intro to psych course, if not like double. So there's a lot of people in the class. And it's kind of strange because I mean you get to like the campus, let's say, and it's like you get off of the it's kind of like a metro, it's like a train. And it's like a 10 to 15 walk just to get to this like building. And then you have to like find your classes. So like definitely figure that out beforehand. But it's kind of easy to make friends as long as you like kind of put yourself out there in the first few days. But the classes themselves are very much like lecture based, and you kind of just take notes throughout. And there isn't really time or space to like get to know your professors or have that like one-on-one time like we do at Middlebury necessarily. So it's kind of entirely on you. And you also don't really get like progress reports or like updates on how you're doing in the class until the very end. So you kind of have to be proactive in like doing the work and setting yourself up well, because they don't really assign homework at all. Like you kind of just have to do the work yourself where you think you might need it.
Sure. How did you do in your classes? Can I ask that question?
Yeah, I did really well in one of them. And then another thing is that a lot of Spanish students, like a lot of them will be at class, but there's not that same accountability. So there's not someone there like taking attendance to make sure that you're there. And that definitely, if you don't go, it definitely will hurt you in the long run, which is something that I kind of learned and I regret and I wish I did differently. But the classes themselves, I found to be really difficult just because it's a different setup to what we have here at Middlebury, like in the US in general. And your final exams matter like a whole lot at so definitely study up for those, I would say.
Fair. All right, Carlos Tercero. So Michael, I'm just gonna, before you go, I'm just gonna say, that if you are taking computer science, you'll also want to study at the Carlos III, but it's a different campus. And I'm not going to really go too far into that other than to tell you, if you're taking computer science, you're not going to be at this campus with a bunch of other Middlebury students. And the most students I send is to this program because econ, poli-sci, IP&E, and IGS all study here. And that is many of you. So go ahead, Michael, tell us what you studied.
Yeah, so I was there. I only took one class at Carlos, but I had a little bit of issues at the beginning with scheduling, so I ended up starting in like 4 different ones. So I got like a little bit of a feel of a lot of different things. They were all very different, and not all of the classes were of the same caliber. I found that having a bunch of different classes at the beginning was really nice because it really was dependent on the professor. And some of the professors were really great, and some of them were really not as good. They just weren't super engaging, and I was falling asleep in their classes. So I would certainly like get a bunch of options, and like you can use those to sort out what you want. The class I ended up taking and staying in was a poli-sci class about the construction of Europe. So it was basically talking about how the EU basically came to be and sort of what different obstacles and barriers were in that. I had a little bit of a different experience than Daniela, I think, because there were 4 other Middlebury students that also happened to be in my class, which was a crazy coincidence. And certainly limited like how immersed I was in that class, because you know I would always sit with the people I knew and like the in our one corner of the class. But I would say, you know, going into it, definitely like keep your mind open and like options open for like what you can take, because the professors are good and bad. And then I would also say like make sure you get there early. It takes like an hour to get there from the sede, and it's they don't take like any attendance or anything, but like they're not going to be super, like they're not going to reach out to you if you miss class or anything and they give you all the notes. Like you have to be much more proactive than you are at Middlebury, and you're not going to necessarily have that same relationship with your professor that you do here. It doesn't mean that the classes are bad at all. They're super interesting. They tend to be a little faster paced than the ones at the sede, just out of the nature that they're 100% in Spanish and predominantly aimed towards Spanish students. So the teachers they don't speak really slow like sometimes the sede ones will, and you're expected to get everything done on your own. But besides that, it was a great experience. It was super cool to sort of be there with all the other Spanish kids and like see the same faces all the time.
I just want to say, so at the Autónoma, you're required to take at least one class at the Autónoma. You may take up to 2. At the Carlos III, Michael's there a special semester, but you're required to take 2 classes at the Carlos III, and you can take up to 3. Just like to say it. Logroño. Hayden.
At the Universidad de La Rioja, the classes, so the university itself has about 7,000 students, 7,000 to 8,000, but the classes that I was in had they were all intro level classes, so they're basically the biggest ones I think that you could possibly have. Each one had 4 majors assigned to them, but they were split up into 2 different groups so that only 2 majors at a time were ever in a class. This meant that the geography and the environment class that I took had about 30 students in it, 30 to 40. And the intro to art history class that I took was supposed to also have that many people, but because of just Spaniard tendencies about school, there were probably 10 to 15 people in that classroom every day, because most people don't, this was mentioned earlier that the exam is what matters, and that is very true. And because of that, a lot of people have notes from previous years and just study for the exam and will get a passing grade on the course from the exam. And so they don't go to class. So there's 10 to 15 people. I went to class, and I actually think my relationships with the professors helped me a lot. I went to a office hours at the start of the semester, one kind of halfway through and one towards the end. The one at the end, I was specifically asking them, hey, like, what type of stuff am I going to see on the exam? Like, is this good stuff to prepare with? And like the professors that I had were super, super helpful, and were like acknowledging, you know, you're an American student. You've never learned art history before, and never in a way that any of these people have, like any of these Spaniards have seen it before. and it's all new terminology. Like, and so because of just relationships with those professors that I formed, I think helped me in these classes. The format of the classes is very much professor lectures, and that's it. So there's not very much discussion. There are some small group sections, but it was really just to do like that section, that week's homework. And that was only for one of my classes because there aren't really many homeworks given. It was 2 homeworks throughout the entire semester for 2 of the courses that I had. What else? The Spanish course at Logroño. This course is for Logroño because it's a smaller program. We still do the same exact test that they do for the Madrid program to determine your level, but it is just one class. So this class was just, when I went last spring, there were 5 of us in Logroño, and it was just us 5 in a classroom with Professor Ricardo. This was the best class that we had. All of us loved our professor. He was super fun, and it was like we would work on, like we started with a more simple thing like comparing preterite, when to use preterite and when to use imperfect, and went into subjunctive and continued through a bunch of more advanced subjunctive tenses, and at the same time as learning about Spanish culture and all of these grammatical structures. I think that's a good rundown of this.
I was gonna say something. Oh, down here, I'm not gonna play this video for you. I'm just have it here. So I'm gonna show you that it exists on the Logroño page, and it's kind of like a 3-minute get to know Logroño. So if Logroño is sounding interesting to you, I feel like Madrid gets all of the airtime. And so if you would like to learn a little bit more about Logroño, I don't think it's a great place to go alone, but I think it can be real fun if there's a group of students who go. One year, the best story about that, they made themselves t-shirts and they called themselves the Griddleberries, which I thought was hilarious, because there were 7 of them, which is a banner year. You guys had 5 though. That's pretty good too. All right. Next we are on Cordoba. Emma.
So I went to Cordoba, and first of all, it's a beautiful place to live. It's in the south of Spain, so if you go in the spring especially, you're gonna get a lot more sun than you would get in Middlebury or probably any of the other sites. I took a linguistics course, which was awesome because we learned all about different varieties of different Romance languages in the Iberian Peninsula. And the reason I went to Cordoba was because I wanted to study the Islamic period in Spain. As you can see here, we have the Great Mosque of Cordoba, and leading up to it, the Roman bridge from the 1st century. So if you're interested in history, especially Islamic history and the Iberian Peninsula, Cordoba is a great place. So I took a history course about Al-Andalus, which is the Islamic state in Spain, and also artistic legacy of Al-Andalus. We went on field trips. We visited different archaeological sites. We went to Alhambra. We went to the mosque a bunch of times as we were learning about different periods of history in our history course. So if you're looking to take your classes like into the city where you're living, Cordoba is a great place. The campus or it's not really a campus, it's like the humanities building is like an old hospital. So it has an interesting historical vibe in that sense. Like all the windows have shutters from where the patients would like scratch their names in. You get to like walk through the old historic Jewish quarters to school every day. I remember when I was talking with my friend who went to Madrid, and she was like, "You don't take the subway?" And I was like, "No, we don't have a metro. Like you just walk through the park and through the Jewish quarters to get to class." So you direct a role in the university, so you'll take 3 courses there, and similar to what Hayden was saying, then you'll take 1 grammar course. The grammar course was super helpful because it gave you kind of like a space to like ask a lot of questions, because like Hayden was saying, it's very lecture style in Spain. And similarly, you will be in courses with, in theory, like 30 people, but it's probably going to be more like 15 people that show up every day. So if you want to, you can ask the professor lots of questions. I honestly felt that my relationships with my professors were closer than a lot of the relationships I've had with professors here at Middlebury. I don't know if it's because there's like at Middlebury, there's a very like it's very like high intense academics, and they're like just kind of the exam matters. So like showing up every day is just not because you have to, but because you actually want to be there. And some of the professors even said that they're like, if you don't want to be here, don't show up. Like I don't want you in class sitting here every day unless you actually want to be here. I really liked it. And I would even, if you're interested, I would give you some course recommendations. And there's one host mom in Cordoba. So if you're interested in living with the host mom, I can also tell you about her. It was nice. I enjoyed it. I definitely got tired towards the end of the semester just because I go to bed early. And if you are not a person who can take a nap, you're gonna get tired. Naps are not optional in the Spanish lifestyle. Like if you don't nap, you're not ever sleeping. But yeah, it was really awesome, and I think a lot of it's like kind of central in Andalusia. So if you're interested in traveling through like southern Spain a lot, it's a great place to be because there's like the train stations like right there, and so you can get to different cities from there.
Sure. Thanks. All right, I'm gonna just point out again that we have the same video link, but it goes to the Cordova video instead. I'm gonna stop sharing. And ask you all to talk to us about housing. Does anybody have any questions about the academic parts before we get to housing? All right, Daniela, you're up. Circling back.
Okay, so for housing, I did an apartment style housing option in Madrid. And so a few things went wrong in the like pre getting to Madrid situation. So like I was doing housing on like a website that was later deemed like unfit for booking housing, which was kind of an issue. So I booked my housing really late in the end, but by that point, it was easy to find places that like already had people that could speak Spanish. That was the only like plus side, I would say. And so due to that, I ended up living like pretty far from the city center, like 30 to 45 minutes on metro, I would say. But all my friends lived in the city. So I always had like a place to be if I didn't want to go home yet, or if I wanted to stay in the city for a while. In terms of like the people that I lived with, it was absolutely amazing. I loved them. It ended up being like a chateau style housing situation. So there were 10 of us girls living under one roof, and there was people from literally all over the place. There was someone from China, someone from Peru, there was someone from Germany. Like we were all came from different walks of life. And so it was really nice to like have that as a home base and be able to like connect with them after having been with like my Middlebury friends or having been with my like local Spanish friends. So that was definitely really nice. I would say like try to book things ahead of time if you can, so you're not super far away. But even if you are, it's not the worst thing in the world because you can definitely work around it. And then I did my housing through this program called Aluni, which I think is pretty good. It's good at pairing you up with people that are around your same age, that are going to school, like all that kind of stuff, which is really useful.
Good. Michael?
Yeah, so I was also in Madrid. I was in like the center of Madrid, and that was honestly like pretty awesome. Not having to go and travel in all the time was really nice. I had a friend, Zach, who was staying about an hour away by bus. And I know for him, there was some long, long mornings where he would have to get up at like 6 to get ready and then be out of his like door by 8 to get in for 9 a.m. So I would definitely recommend living somewhere downtown if you can. I was living in an apartment with 5 other guys. So there were 3 Spaniards, 2 from the Canary Islands. There was 1 guy from Italy and 1 guy from Mexico. All of them spoke Spanish, which was awesome. And then there's also like different languages there too. I really liked living in an apartment, to be honest, and I would definitely recommend that. I think the residencias are sort of like a really safe option, but it's tough to meet people in them because you spend a lot of your time at the sede or with your friends from the sede, and you probably won't be interacting with a lot of people around your residencia, although they're very similar to housing at Mid. I think the homestays, I heard great things about them, and then I heard really bad things about them, to be honest, too. I think it was a toss-up, really just luck there. If you could get a really great person and have an awesome, like totally immersive experience. One of my friends had an awesome host dad, and he still talks with his host brother. And then one of my other friends ate like hot dogs every morning for breakfast the entire semester, and she hated it. I think that was actually Athena, who I think was supposed to be here today as well. And then I would just say, like, the apartments, they're probably the most work in order to get your apartment, because you have to satisfy all those requirements. You have to have more than 50% that speak Spanish. It's got to be somewhere safe and somewhere like not necessarily central, but like pretty accessible. So you have to do a lot of working. I also used a Looney, and that was super helpful. But I definitely had to put some hours in there to make sure I got a spot that I was happy with, and then like that satisfied all the requirements. I remember I had to send like 4 emails with like 6 different options each before like some of them came back as like, yes, those work. So I would get on that sooner rather than later. But definitely the apartments were the way to go for me. I loved it, having my own kitchen, having my own room. It was really nice, and then being able to sort of actually meet my roommates as well, and I still talk with them. So that was really great too. So I definitely recommend those apartments.
I just feel like I have to balance it out a little bit. I hear great things about the host families. I don't know about the hot dog host family. I'll follow up about that. But I do want to say that the host families do tend to be a little bit farther out, right? So you are trading the convenience of being right downtown if you want to live with a host family. So, you had to run it by like, your own set of criteria about what's most important to you. But I would say for a homestay, I think Emma, you were in a homestay too, so I'll leave you to talk about it. But you think about what kind of environment you want, and you're in someone's home, so it's going to be clean, it's going to be quiet, it's going to be nice, but it is going to be a little bit farther out, because people who have a room in their house, in their nice, quiet, clean house, it's going to be a little bit farther out. And then the residencias, like I said, they're easy to book ahead of time. So if they're popular with international students, they can be on the expensive side, depending on the amenities. They are super well located. I would say that most of those are right downtown, because that's how come they can charge the rent that they charge for them. But like Michael said, they're kind of like, you think of them like dorms at Mid. People tend to keep their doors closed, though. They don't tend to be like the walk down the hall and, hey, Daniela, what are you doing tonight? That you'll find a lot of closed doors. So I think, there are some common spaces where people can hang out in them. But I don't know if they feel as Middlebury-like as you might be expecting with that. All right, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to actually go to Emma next, sorry, because I want you to talk about the host family, and that's you, so.
Yeah, so I lived with an older Spanish woman who had a couple, her sons had all moved out, so she had a couple extra rooms. She was lovely. I thought she was so funny. She still texts me sometimes. And it's a really great way to kind of like, if you're really like, you want to get out of your comfort zone and really like experience what it is like living in a Spanish family, I would say definitely do it. It can definitely be hard because at Middlebury you have so many opportunities to choose kind of like when you want to go, just like the simple things, right? It's like when you want to go to bed, or like when you want to eat and stuff like that. And I think like, like Michael was talking about, like having the freedom of your own kitchen. So I think that's something you definitely want to think about. But if you're a pretty flexible person and you're really interested in not just like going to Spain, but like experiencing Spanish culture, I would recommend the host stay.
How was the food with your host family?
The food was good. We didn't eat a lot of vegetables. I'd say I've never had cholesterol problems. I came back with cholesterol problems. But it's definitely like, it was not really what I expected. I think it was a lot more like, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of like red meat in the Spanish diet, which I was not expecting. But it was good. She was a good cook.
A lot of oil too. Everything seemed to be fried or in excess of oil.
Yeah, a lot of fried stuff. I don't know. It was definitely. It was also just fun because you could like we just got to talk about like, oh, like why don't we do it like this? And she'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you're like, oh, like you don't ever put like butter on your bread? And she's like, why would we ever do that? Like I don't even know if she bought butter. Like it's very like olive oil like centric. But it's fun. Like we watched like the Spanish news during lunch, and we would just like complain about Spanish politics as if it was like something I knew anything about. But yeah, and also like it is like I think in Madrid it might be a little bit different, but like the host mom in Cordoba like definitely thinks of you as her child. Like I had to go to the doctor, I was having this foot problem, and she was like, I'm coming with you. And I was like, no, it's like really okay. Like I don't want to like take you out of your day. And she's like, no, like I have to go. Like you don't understand. Like I'm your mom here. And I was like, okay, thank you. So if you're also worried about like being far from home, being for the first time, a homestay can be good in that sense.
I just want to jump in because one reason people tend to shy away from the homestay is they feel like they're going to be, have a curfew and have this be, really keep tabs on. And while they are very involved and interested in your life, they realize that you're 20 and you're going to probably go to bed later than they do, and you will have your own key and you will come and go, but you will do it quietly, right? It's just about respect. And if you say you're going to be home for dinner and then you're not going to be home for dinner, you call and you make that awkward phone call, but nobody's angry or upset. It's just respectful to let people know where you're going to be. So.
That's definitely true. Honestly, she gave us our keys. She's like, come home whenever you want. Just like, if you're not going to come home for a meal, just let me know. That's all I ask. She always wanted to hear how our nights out were. It was not like living with someone who's keeping like a curfew. I should have a good thing to do.
Just sometimes if you're not going to be home, she just wants to have some cereal and go to bed. She doesn't want to have to make dinner. Right? Normal stuff. All right. Hey, tell me about your living.
The Logroño program only has apartments available, and it is the situation where you don't book in advance because you just show up and do it there. This stressed my parents out greatly. They were worried that I was going to end up living in a hotel the entire semester, and it was totally fine. Basically, what happens is when you show up on a Thursday, and then you do 2 days of orientation in Madrid, then you go to Logroño, you show up on Saturday, Sunday, and you have a week of orientation there before classes start. But really the first 3 days of this, your mornings and afternoons, like all of your time except for, free time to eat lunch and dinner, and after dinner, is dedicated to finding apartments. And this is not just you on your own finding these apartments. The Middlebury program gets you an ayudante. Our ayudante was super helpful. And this ayudante does a lot of the actual, they do a lot of the actual work involved with the apartment finding. In terms of so for finding the apartments, the Universidad de La Rioja has a website that actually has a list of lots of apartments, and it lists some amenities, it lists how many people are currently there, and how to get in contact with them. So that was super useful for finding the apartments themselves. And then we would send them to the ayudante, and the ayudante would be like, all right, great, I'll give them a call. Because, this is your first week in Spain. Giving somebody a call to schedule an appointment to visit the apartment in advance over the phone with the accents is really nerve-wracking. And so the ayudante did that part. Then we would all go visit it as a group. So the first day we had all sent 4 different apartments. And so we all walked to 4 different apartments and visited them through the morning. The ayudante took the lead in most of the conversation with the house owner, with the apartment owner, to be asking important questions about how much rent was, whether utilities were included in the rent, stuff like that. We were able to ask questions as we thought of them if we had them, and we were there the entire time. But most of that Spanish conversation, because it's really nerve-wracking to have to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to speak in Spanish to Spaniards to book an apartment for the first time ever. That a lot of that is taken care of by that ayudante. My housing was pretty great. I ended up living 10 minutes away from the university. So I had one roommate named Kat who was there the entire time, and I had a second roommate who there was one person for the first 2 weeks who I never met, and then somebody else for a month, and then somebody else for the second 2 months. But I would hang out with Kat occasionally. We went to all of the festivals together, and so the Holy Week celebrations for Easter. We went to and watched those parades. She cooked a tortilla with me very early on. But living there was great because I would basically come back to my house after classes in the morning to have lunch, take the siesta, and then be able to go back out in the afternoon to evening to hang out with the hang out with friends and explore Logroño and do other things.
Perfect. All right, so those are our places to go. What questions do you all have? Usually people want to know things like these. So I'll just ask a couple. Was your Spanish good enough? Any of you can answer this one. Was your Spanish good enough? Not Daniela, you may not answer. Anybody else can answer.
I think my Spanish was good enough. It's definitely harder in the lectures because they are just going rapid fire. Some of them are reading off notes, which can be a little weird because like their intonation is a little different from like what you're used to in a conversation. Other people are just like giving so much rhetorical flair that you're like, I do not know how to put this down in my notes. But I found that like towards the end, like I was able to just kind of like even just kind of be like thinking my own thoughts and taking down notes. So like your Spanish, if it's good enough at like yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Like you're gonna learn a lot while you're there.
It's good. And that's the thing about not having assessments until the end. You don't really get tested on that all to the end. What are you gonna say, Hayden?
For me, one of my professors in particular talked really, really fast to the point that even the native Spanish speakers in the class were asking her to slow down in the first 2 weeks. That ended up actually being really good for me though, because it meant by like the second or third month, I was able to listen and understand. I was like, man, like I'm actually getting better at understanding Spanish. On the other hand, the landlord for my apartment, I couldn't even understand her when she came back to, at the very end to give me my security deposit back because she talks ridiculously softly and with like the Spanish lisp to the point where I just was like, yeah, yeah, to everything she said. But that is an exception to the rule. At the start, my Spanish was good enough to get me through the conversations that I needed to have and to be able to understand what other people were saying enough that I was able to learn. So I think that was just up to the 300 level Spanish course. And so with that, having taken that at mid, I was prepared for the program.
Perfect.
I would also say too, everyone comes in with a different level of Spanish, and it doesn't really matter where you at because you learn so quickly being like immersed in total Spanish. Like even if you come in and you're not feeling super confident, like within the first 2 weeks your Spanish improves. Within like a month you're easily able to do everything you want to, and by the end of the program you're pretty much fluent if you really dedicate it. I mean, if you're speaking English every day and not doing any Spanish, you're obviously not going to learn anything, but predominantly I feel like everyone was able to take their Spanish from whatever level it was and get to a very, very confident and comfortable space.
All right. Next question. If anybody else has questions, interrupt me. I'm just going to ask the ones that people always ask because I've been doing this a long time. Daniela, for you, did you make friends? How did you make friends?
Yeah, I made one really good Spanish friend and then she introduced me to her friends, but it was basically just through my WAM class. Like I was taking a class with someone that was also in the Middlebury program but doesn't go to Middlebury.
Mhm.
And we both like just so happened to be taking one of the same psych classes. And on the first day, she sat next to this girl. She was like, I don't know, like I'm nervous to make friends. And I was like, no, we have to. And so like I introduced us and she became like a really good friend. And even to this day, she's like, anytime you want to come to Madrid, like just text me, like you can stay at my house, like all this stuff. So it's not necessarily easy to make friends outside of the Middlebury program, but it is worthwhile, I would say. And then it's also, I think, a lot easier to make friends with like the people that you're living with, just because you're going to see them on a daily basis. And then anyone in the Middlebury program, like you're all kind of just one big happy family. For example, like in the fall, there were only like 40 of us or so. I know that in the spring there were a lot more, so that was a little bit harder, but it's pretty easy to make friends, I would say.
Good. Celeste? Oh, yeah.
Hi, this is more of a logistical question, but I saw that we have to submit a form of intent
Mhm.
by, I think, November.
Yep.
What does that entail?
Sure. So none of them know about this, so I'll take this one. Intent to study abroad. You have to basically tell us when you want to study abroad. And it's not binding. You don't have to study abroad just because you tell us that you want to study abroad in fall in Spain, but that's what we're going to ask you. And then we're going to look at everybody and where everybody wants to go abroad. And then we're going to, tell people when they're going to need to study abroad based on the reasons for wanting to study abroad the semester they want to study. If you have to take some class before you go, that's going to be a pretty strong reason for studying abroad the semester you want to go. If your friend is on the soccer team, so you have to study abroad in the spring, that's not a good reason to go. And we're going to ask you to find more friends and go abroad in the fall, and let that friend on the soccer team go abroad with other people who have to go abroad in the spring. Otherwise, it's just not going to work on campus. So this is our attempt at that. So I would say sort yourselves out earlier, so that you're happier with your choices.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody want to talk about extracurricular activities they did?
I can talk about one that another person in my group, Mael, he joined the rugby team.
Great.
And so like just he asked the ayudante during the first week, like, hey, is there a rugby team nearby? And then he was like, yeah, here's the info. And then he called them and joined the team and was playing all year, all semester long. And also for making friends, I didn't do many like extracurricular programs, but the Bologna did have a strong Erasmus group, which is basically Europe study abroad um, program. And so for making friends, it was really easy to make friends with other Erasmus people because they just looked at us as also Erasmus people. That's basically how you introduce yourself in Logroño. You're just like, yeah, I'm Erasmus. It's just easier that way than saying, actually, I'm from Middlebury, which is anyway. For making Spaniard friends, of the five like outside of apartment friends, I ended up making a good group of five Spaniard friends just by randomly sitting next to one of them and then asking them for notes after class. And then the next class, they asked me if I wanted to go get food with them after class. And so then that started, we ended up hanging out all semester long. And so Erasmus friends are very easy to make because it's like in Madrid with the big happy family. That's what um the study abroad, all of the study abroad people going to Logroño are like.
I'm taking this question in the chat. Somebody else want to say anything about extracurriculars or activities? All right, then I'm going to stop typing and I'll just answer this question aloud then. Lucy is asking if you can take classes at the SEDE and others at the other universities. So everything that you take abroad will be in Spanish. Everything you take abroad will transfer back to your Middlebury degree. Everything you take abroad will count into your GPA. If you apply to one of three programs, if you want to go to Madrid, you apply to either the SEDE Prim, which means all four classes at the SEDE Prim, or you apply to the Carlos Tercero program. That's at least one class at the SEDE Prim, at least two classes at the Carlos Tercero. That's the one for social sciences. And then you've got your fourth class, and that's either going to be an internship, another class at the SEDE, or another class at the Carlos Tercero. Or you do the Autónoma program, which is at least one class at the Autónoma, at least two classes at the SEDE, and then that fourth class can be, again, one at the SEDE, one at the Autónoma, or an internship. Even current Febs have to have declared your major by the application deadline on February 1st. Yes, if you want to go abroad next year. So Febs, I get it. You get the short end of a lot of stuff. You don't have to go abroad next year. You have a whole other semester that's still before your senior year that you can study abroad. And fun fact, you can also study abroad anyone during your senior year. It's hard to study abroad the last semester of your senior year, but it's just a petition if you want to study abroad in your second to last semester on campus. Basically, you just count the 8 semesters. And if you're abroad anything before 7 and 8, you can just apply to do that. And for Febs, that would be fall, not of fall 25, but fall 26. That's still your junior year. And then you can petition if you want to go abroad fall of your senior year, or sorry, first semester of your senior year.
Just a quick thing about like the pass fail situation. As far as I know, I don't think you can pass fail. But if you end up going to one of the Spanish universities on top of Cerebrim, their system, like as far as like grades go, is very different from ours. And so it'll basically be like translated back into the Middlebury grading system.
Yeah, good point. We don't take their grades like they are because nobody would ever get an A if we did. So yeah, we translate those for you. Celeste, yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, sorry, I have another question.
Mhm.
What was your day-to-day life, just like after classes or maybe on the weekend? Like, I heard that it's really easy to get around Europe. So like, did you travel often or did you feel like there was a lot of time restrictions or just anything like that?
You want me to call on you? Michael. Oh, Hayden, go ahead. Sorry. You and me.
I just,
You're next.
as for traveling in Europe, for Logroño, you can travel through Europe, but keep in mind that in order to fly out of Madrid, or you would have to, there's a 4-hour bus. And if you want to fly out of Barcelona, there is either a 6-hour bus or a train ride that is 5 hours, I think. Which means flying out of Bilbao is the best, which is an hour and a half bus first, and then flying out of Bilbao. So if you are going to Spain to study abroad and you also want to do a lot of traveling, that's just another, it's something to keep in mind if you're going to Logroño. That being said, one of the 5 people in this that I was there with in the spring did do a lot of traveling from Logroño, so it is possible. Just know that you have that extra thing to think about. For day-to-day life, it was classes from my classes basically ended. I would wake up, go to class at 9, have an hour-long break, go to class at 11, and then that was either a 2-hour class and I'd be done after that, or 1 hour and then have another class at 1. And so my classes would all end by 2, and it was only Monday to Thursday. Then after classes ended, I would go home and eat lunch at 2 o'clock, rest, relax. Then in the afternoon, I would go hang out with the Spaniard friends, or go around Logroño, go to the gym, climb the hill technically nearby, and then eat dinner around 8, 7 to 8. I always ate dinner on the early side for Spain, 8 o'clock, and then nightlife if you want it.
I can also add to that as well. So I think I can answer both questions at once. So my class schedule was actually incredible. I don't know how I managed to pull this off, but I only had classes 3 days a week, Tuesdays through Thursdays. And I took one class at Carlos Tercero, but it was like almost like a seminar class, not in like the amount of students in it, but in like the time block. So it was like a 3-hour class with 15 minutes break in between. And that was only on Wednesdays. And then I had my 3 classes at the Sede on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 in the morning and then 1 in the evening. So I was able to travel all the time. And that was honestly really, really awesome. And being in Madrid, the Madrid Barajas airport is really central. It's really easy to get to. There's a metro that takes you right to it, and it's free because everyone gets a student metro card, which costs $8 a month. I traveled pretty extensively in Spain, so like 6 or 7 different cities, and then pretty extensively in Europe as well. It's pretty easy to do, and if you're doing like budget travel with Ryanair, and traveling with a backpack for a weekend, it's also not super expensive as well. Like flights in the US are crazy expensive compared to Europe. I got a flight from Venice back to Madrid for 15 euros, which is nuts, absolutely crazy. So I would definitely take advantage of that if you were in Madrid, because it's pretty economical, easy, and if you just plan your weekends out well, it works awesome.
Anything else anybody want to say? Daniela or Emma?
I guess to add on, I would say if you're interested in international travel, I would definitely go to Madrid. I was still able to go. I went to the Canary Islands, I went to Italy, I went to many different cities in Spain, but like logistically, like getting that train to Madrid and then like, you know, the budget flight from Madrid is just not gonna be as easy as someone who's like in Madrid has their metro card, can just take the metro right there. So I think that's something to consider. If you're interested in traveling through Spain, I would say any site is probably just as good. Madrid, of course, is more centrally located, but if you're looking to travel through Europe, Madrid is definitely the way to go.
Or stay after or go early. I'm just, I gotta
Or
put
that,
on.
yeah. It definitely is. It's true. So
Danielle, parting words, and then I got like 2 more slides.
I will say a lot of people in the fall program took advantage of each other. So it's like, oh, does anybody want to take this trip to Budapest? And so like a big group of people would go, which was really, really nice. And it's fun to not be like alone abroad in a city where like maybe you don't speak the same language as everyone else.
Yeah, I would second that as well. Every trip that I did was with at least one friend, usually like 4. There was one trip where I went with like 6 or 7 people. Like so many people want to go and explore Europe, and it's really, really, really awesome to be able to. I mean, even if you have to take a flight that's at 6 a.m. or like 12 and like midnight, like it all works out and it ends up being pretty great. And you know, we're still pretty young, so I didn't really mind taking those flights if it meant saving a ton of money.
All right, well, I'm gonna say thank you very much to my returnees. I've got 2 more slides and I'm gonna record them just for posterity, but you know, nobody has to stick around if you don't want to watch them, that's fine. Thank you very much. If you are interested in doing the Middlebury School in Spain and maybe another Middlebury program, they just want you to know that there is some money available to you if you end up, you know, doing the Middlebury School abroad and the Monterey program and language schools. You can get some more money to be doing those things. So I'm telling, this is my PSA for that. And then I just want to kind of tell you, wrapping up, kind of what's next. So you can meet with me, you can schedule an appointment online. Now that we've had this meeting, I kind of like to wait till we've had this so I can let people watch this first. Meet with your language professors and your academic advisors. Try to start narrowing down, you know, what you think your major is going to be, what other classes you might need to take language wise or major wise, what classes to save to study abroad, right? So you can take like, who was just saying? Somebody was just saying that you can wait and take some of your distribution classes abroad. That you can definitely do. Declare your intent to study abroad by November 1st. I'll throw that link in the chat here. I can't. Declare your major and then apply for study abroad to Middlebury approval by February 1st. Like I said, if you don't go through the process your intent to study abroad, you won't be able to participate to study abroad. So even if you're not sure, definitely fill out that form to give yourself the option later. Also have a look at your passport, make sure that it's not going to renew or not going to expire before or during your time abroad, because you should go ahead and renew that. You will have to get a visa to go to visa to go to Spain if you are not a citizen of the European Union. So if you've got a French passport, you're fine. But if you have a blue US passport, you cannot go to Spain without a visa, which makes it difficult to go in the spring semester if you're trying to do something else in the fall semester. So it takes, I don't know, 8 to 12 weeks to get the Spanish visa, which means that they're going to hold on to your passport. So it means if you're going to go abroad in the fall next year, it means you're not leaving the country next summer. If you're going to go abroad in the spring 2026, it means you're not leaving the country in the fall semester. So make plans according to your immigration status, knowing that your passport is going to be not available for your use for several months before you're getting ready to study abroad, which is why it's difficult to go somewhere else before Spain. But I've got 2 kids in Monterey right now doing it. So you can go Puerto Rico, then Spain, you can go Monterey, then Spain, or Spain, then something else if you're looking to do 2 things. So I'm going to stop recording and stop sharing and say thank you. And let me know what questions you have. I'll hang out until nobody's in the room.